I remember as a child and as a teenager, my parents would sometimes go out to different things, and you wouldn't necessarily know when they would come home. One of the constant annoyances that my mum would have when she would come home at times is that the kitchen would look far worse than it was when she had left. Some of you probably know similar experiences perhaps with your own children. At my parents' home, there is the front gates, and they creak just a slight amount, and you can hear them creak, and you know the car is about to come in, which gives you an indication you've got about a couple of minutes to hurry up and clean the place up before Mum walks in the door. And I think to a certain extent, this gospel is a reminder for servants that that's not the way we're meant to live. We're not meant to be saying, oh, they're here, let's suddenly do what we're meant to do. We're meant to be faithful all the time. As children and as teenagers, we weren't meant to leave food around the television, on the couch and so on, and plates. And as soon as we heard that Mum would be back, everything would get collected up, taken to the kitchen as if we'd eaten in the kitchen. I'm sure Mum was realised perhaps if she looked at the crumbs and so on, that the mess was there. But we're called to be faithful all the time, even when the owner of the house or the master is not watching, or even if we don't think they're watching, we're called to be faithful all the time. And so Paul, talking about this in the first reading, writing to the Romans, talks about this, how we sometimes can get impacted by sin. And the law of sin, we can sometimes even become slaves to sin, that we're called to actually be people of grace. During Lent, we focus on 3 things that help us overcome sin. But as Catholics, we should really be aware of these right throughout the entire year. During Lent, we have a campaign to promote the 3 things that help overcome sin and help us to walk with the life of Christ. That's prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, acts of charity. They're the things that help overcome sin. If we're in a pattern or a cycle of sin, those 3 things will help. Often when people go to confession, they might be given a prayer as their penance. Sometimes they might be given some sort of fasting or abstinence. It's a great way of overcoming certain sins or helping to get us on the path. If you haven't fasted for a while, it's not just something we do during Lent or during the 2 days of the year, Good Friday or Ash Wednesday. That should be a pattern of what we do as Catholics. Friday is a great day to do it. Sometimes in certain Catholic traditions going back hundreds of years ago, and it's present still in the Orthodox tradition, that Wednesday is a day of fasting as well. And fasting helps us to realign where we're at. And then we should be doing actively living out the life of charity. We shouldn't be doing these things just because someone's watching, as the gospel talks about, or that we know the Mass is about to arrive. We should be constantly praying. We should be in a pattern, a routine of fasting and of almsgiving. That's part of who we are as Catholics. So if you haven't done some sort of abstinence in recent times, or if you haven't done some acts of charity in recent times, now that things are starting to open up, commit to some sort of act of charity over the next few weeks or so. And perhaps consider doing some sort of abstinence, not because it's Lent, but because that's part of who we are. That helps us to not be slaves of sin, but to know that we are in a relationship with the Master who wants us to be the very best that we can be and live that out with joy.